I hate these lights. I mean, they're so bright and no one else knows. It just looks normally lit up to everyone. But I'm like ready to say, I'm not just going to be in the dark. Why can't I just sit in the dark? It's like my comfort. So like everyone online has to be able to see me. Well, I mean, what's the difference? See what? I mean, I look like a disgruntled hard-boiled egg. Steve Weiner here from GetRubix.com. Today we're going to be taking a look at the rest of our post-migration tasks. So instead of kind of constructing them one by one, because we already went through that, gave an example, we're just going to kind of take a look at all of them, what they do, call out anything of note, and just kind of get that out of the way so we can have an understanding of them and then move on to ultimately packaging them. Well, no, I refuse to use any natural sunlight. Okay, so let's go ahead and open up Visual Studio Code with, with pretty much everything we have here. And last time we took a look at this middle boot task, basically how it works, how we made it using the task scheduler template, because all these are just XMLs. And ultimately we put together the PowerShell script that it would call. Now, once we're past this middle boot one, the whole point is everything will run at the login. When the user logs in with their new credentials after the migration, we don't need to update this now, everything will kick off from there. So let's take a look at that order, right? So if I'm just going to go through these, right, the first one that's going to run is the restore profile is probably going to run first, right? So let's check that out. That is set to run 30 seconds after login. So restore profile, 30 seconds after login. So this is a task that is calling PowerShell, and all it's doing is calling our restore profile. So there's nothing really special about this. It's just they got a 30-second delay. Again, it's running a system context. And if we go look at the actual script, we can take a look at what's happening here. So again, we created a post-migration log, and we're just going to append the transcript to that. So everything from here on out is going to append to that log file. This will give us one nice, clean post-migration log. We are setting a... Okay, so we're checking for this data migration flag. So if you remember, in the beginning of Start Migrate PS1, well, I shouldn't say the beginning. Once we get through, we kind of have to decide if we have enough free disk space to do this profile migration. If we do, we are setting a file called migrate.txt. Nothing in it. All that is acting to us is as a flag to determine did we migrate or not. So now when it comes time to look at that, we're going to check for that, because if it's not there, we're not going to go through all this. There's nothing to migrate because we never did it. So the first thing we're doing is checking for that flag. If it's found, we're gonna basically do the inverse of everything we need to back up. So we're going to get the current username, which will be the new username. Again, like we talked about from yesterday, we're going to reference our XML that we created in Start Migrate. Now, I do want to go back to that real quick just to talk about what's in that XML. And I think we looked at an example of it, but remember, this XML for you is going to have the group tag from the device, the username, serial number, and the XML locations. And those are the locations we're backing up on the device. So once we have that, we're going to pull that back in because we got it from before. And we're going to parse out our locations. So now, just like before, for each location in there, we're going to construct the new local path. We're going to construct the temp path that we know it's in. And we're going to just robocopy our way back, right? After that, we're going to reverse the policy to only show the other users on display. Again, this was something back in Start Migrate that we set around step 8 or 9, I think. Let's take a look here. This was step, totally lying. Maybe it's earlier. It was step 4, maybe. All right, I was way off. Yeah, so this policy, only show the other user option, we're now disabling that because we've logged in, we have our new user credentials. We don't need that anymore. So we're going to kill that so it goes back to showing the name. And again, we're going to disable this task. Right now, one thing I didn't add here, and that I would probably recommend doing is, as you're restoring the data, once you've tested this and your data comes back, this is the time you're going to want to start deleting the old places, deleting the public paths, right? Deleting the old directory, because we don't need it anymore. And that'll be a simple, like, you know, remove item path, public path, right? You could do that, no problem. Same thing with the old directory, but for testing purposes, I don't do that here. Plus, everyone handles that a little differently. So just something to understand that would be a good place to do that. Put the policy back, disable. Now we disable the scheduled task. Again, you're going to see a common pattern. PowerShell is going to disable the task that ran it, so it can't run again, right? So now that we've run this, we're going to go ahead and disable it. In this case, we are going to reboot because of all the local app data that got copied back. So we're going to, this will should be the final reboot of the machine. And of course, we stop the transcripts. Okay, for our next task, we're going to set the primary user of the machine. Nothing special about the task here. We do have a 10-minute delay, and really the reason for this, and this could probably be 5 minutes, it's just basically let everything settle. We logged in, we want to make sure the device knows who we are, we're doing the profile restore, but essentially there's nothing else special about it. We're running this primary user PowerShell script. We'll just look at the Rubik's Dev Tenant. It kind of doesn't matter, right? The whole idea is we're looking at devices that have primary user, right? So this attribute enrolled by, these are going to be blank. Enrolled by is always going to be the provisioning package. We can't change that. But we definitely want this device associated with our primary user. So this is the attribute we're going to ultimately be targeting when it's empty, okay? Because it will be empty in the beginning. So how are we going to do this? So let's head over to one of my test machines here. So this is a machine that is still in Rubik's Dev. It doesn't really matter. We'll use that as an example, right? And how we can affect the primary user. Okay, I went ahead and opened up PowerShell ICE as system, who am I, NT authority system. So that's great. So essentially what we're going to do here is we are going to take a look at some of the calls we make in the script. Now, I'm not going to go through the app bridge and the authentication. That's pretty clear here, right? So if you look at it, just like before, it tells us what permissions we need, where to set our information, and then we're going to have some headers we can pass through, right? But we're just going to take a look at these specific calls, right? Set this user. So what I need from the device is the serial number. So the first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to grab that. Let's try this. Okay, so serial number equals, we'll just do a get TBOI object, class, win32 BIOS, select object, expand property, serial number. If I run this, now I have my serial number, it's perfect. So what do I need to do now? I need to look up the Intune device ID with that serial number. So what I'm going to do is, let me authenticate real quick here. Okay, so we need to use that serial number to get the Intune object. So Intune object equals, and this is where we'll invoke the MS Graph request, get ps graph.microsoft.com/beta/device management, which is Intune manage devices. It's all the devices in Intune. And here we're going to add a filter that equals contains, and we're gonna get the serial number that's equal to the serial number. That's okay. Let's run that, and let's call our Intune object. Okay, so it's really nothing. So we got to crack that open. Dot value, perfect. So now if I do dot value dot ID, I get the ID. So that's essentially what we need here. I need the Intune ID. And the Intune ID equals the Intune object.value.id. Perfect. All right, next thing I need to do is I need to look up the user based on that registry property we were looking for. So let me just show you what that is. So that is, yeah, I don't like the UAC. Okay, so that registry is going to be, it's local machine software, Windows, current version, software, Microsoft, oh, I messed up. I have a lot of stuff on the screen. There we go, current version. Under current version, we're going to look for authentication and logon UI. Okay, last logged in display name, Rick Jones. So that's what we want. We want the actual phonetic, display name. All right, let's go ahead and get that. We're going to say the username is equal to get item property value path is going to be HKLM, software, Microsoft, Windows, current version, authentication, logon UI, and we want the name to be last logged on display name. If you type in there, you're kind of screwed. Last logged in display name. So if I run that, pipe that out. Perfect. So now what I want to do is I need to find that object, right? So to find the object, let's see the way everything is working here. So to find the object, we're going to go user object equals, and this is going to be another call here. Call graph get URL https graph.microsoft.com/beta/users, and I should be able to filter right from here, right from users. So it'll be a filter display name. We don't need equals. And we should be able to just add the username there, and that should be it. Let's run that and check that out. URL parameters, graph.microsoft.com/beta/users. What did we do wrong here? We did something wrong. Okay, so nothing's working here. What's going on? Why can't I get the... This was working 2 seconds ago. Okay, we had some frustration there, but the cool part is we learned something. That's typically how it goes with these things. You can spend hours trying to fix one line of code, derail, finally fix it, and then forget what you're doing to begin with. But in this situation, I learned something cool, so I'm going to show you what happened. Okay, obviously you cut a lot of that out because there's a lot of garbage here, but you can see I'm making all these calls to show you the relationships here, and we got stuck on invoke MS Graph request and our filter for what really should have been display name username. And when we run that, you can see it thinks the URL is invalid. Yeah, so what I learned is when we're doing this in the script with the copy you have in GitHub, everything is run by an app bridge. So it's not actually an invoke MS Graph request, it's an invoke REST method, and then we attach the headers to it. But I just want to authenticate to the graph, run some commands, and I'm having a problem with that. So if you have a problem with that when you're running MS Graph request, here's what we can do. So I'm going to scrap this for now. What we're going to do is we're going to kind of build some stuff first. So what we're going to do is we're going to build our request. This is our URL request. URL request is actually okay. URI request equals system. There's a built-in, what did I do there? There's a built-in URI builder. URI builder. And here we could just go ahead and put in our endpoint. graph.microsoft.com/beta/users. Perfect. Down here, we can put in our query, right? So the query is going to be filter display name is equal to user. Now that's good, because notice that when we typically do the filter, because it's PowerShell, we have to have the question mark, the $sign, and the little tick in between. This way we don't have to do that. So that's kind of a cool thing here. I like this already. And then down here, we can just reinstantiate the variable URI request. So our user object is going to equal the invoke MS graph request URL. Okay. Actually, we can do the method first. Method get URL, and then we can just simply put in the URI request. So I'm going to run these, and we're going to hope for the best. No, okay. So, okay, everyone stay calm. I put user instead of username. Now let's run it again. Yay, success. So if we call user object, we have our object. If I crack it open and get value, we have everything, meaning if I do ID, I have the ID. That's what we wanted this whole time. It's so long. Okay. User ID equals user object value.id. Run that, check it, user ID. Great. So what do I have now? I have the Intune ID and the user ID. We have to marry them together, which is essentially what we want to do. So we're going to need two things to do that with, okay? We are going to need, first we're going to need the device users URI, right? So that's going to be the device users URI. And that's just going to be the Intune endpoint. It's going to be graph.microsoft.com/beta/device management/managed devices Intune device Intune ID /users/tick ref. Hopefully this won't give us a problem. So the devices. Do we not have the Intune ID? Oh, maybe I didn't run that. Cool, we're good there. Okay, after the devices users reference URI, we need the actual, we need the user URI, right? Which we have, because we have that's just going to be the reference plus the ID. So the user URI is equal to https graph.microsoft.com/beta/users plus user ID. Okay. Let's double check that. That's our user URI. Beautiful. Okay. So now what we have to do is we're going to go ahead and construct the JSON for the post, right? So all we have to do there is our ID, in this case, is going to be at odata.id. Okay. JSON is going to be at, be careful here, the ID is equal to the full user URI. Okay. And then we're going to convert to JSON, and we'll add the compressed path. So if we take a look at what that gives us, I'm going to call JSON. That is exactly the type of data we're going to post to the Intune device object to tell it who the primary user is. So in the actual script, the way we construct that, and I'll show you here, this is constructed with invoke REST method, and all we're doing is posting that JSON to that endpoint, right? And ultimately what that does for us is that puts this value for the user URI into the device. And just like before, we disable the task that's at the script. Well, that was wild, but the cool thing is we went on kind of a funky adventure and we learned something. I guess I lied again. We're not going to look at all of them. That took a lot of time. These lights. 1, 2, 3.